Questions and comments? The gentleman for Peterborough, Peterborough Kawartha.
And thank you to my colleague for his intervention today. And for those watching, this is a very serious issue that we have a point of privilege. The Speaker himself has ruled in favor of this, and we are asking for documents to be turned over for accountability, transparency, and ensuring one of the biggest missing pieces I hear about at the doors is accountability. I'm curious if my colleague can answer why he thinks they're not turning over the documents.
River Portage Lisgar.
It doesn't take a lot of common sense to come to this conclusion. They're hiding something. Why wouldn't you turn over the documents if there was nothing to hide? The reality is, when the Auditor General comes out with a report that says over 80% of these contracts have a conflict of interest within them, that $390 million has been misspent and funneled through Liberal insiders' companies that were stacked on the board, I don't blame them for not wanting to turn over the documents, because they know the outcome is very, very bad for the Liberal Party of Canada.
Question commentaire, the gentleman for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that speech from our new Member of Parliament, he's been here recently, elected in a by-election, a colleague, has been very insightful. He's clearly done his research and looked at the documents. And we hear this tripe, and it really is just tripe, from the Liberal House Leader and the Liberal members of Parliament over there about the RCMP are the only ones that can ask for documents. Well, I tell you, the RCMP is interested in receiving these documents. You know why, Mr. Speaker? Because in the Justice Committee, when the Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP was asked if you would look at the documents if they came from the House of Commons by the order, here's what Deputy Commissioner Mark Flynn said. I can say that any information that comes to the RCMP will go through the appropriate level of review using the appropriate resources to do so. They didn't say it would interfere with their investigation. Isn't the best way to avoid having Liberal cronies funnel $400 million of taxpayer money to their own companies is not to appoint people to public positions who are conflicted before they're even on the board?
The honourable member for Portage Lisgar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and an excellent point from my colleague. And again, I'd like to applaud him because the member for South Shore St. Margaret has done yeoman's work to get to the bottom of this. He has done incredible work to find the truth of this matter. And it's not surprising to me that he's bringing up more recent realities from the RCMP, because why would this be your defense? The RCMP don't want to see the information that proves that we were corrupt. That is a very weak argument. The Charter is meant to protect Canadians from the government, not the government from Canadians. And I can't wait until we form the next common sense Conservative government where we will be thoughtful of our appointments, not put a bunch of insiders into places, because we have a different level, a much higher level of respect for not only this institution, but for government as a whole. And we will be transparent by default, but follow through on it, not just say it.
Questions and comments? The gentleman for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, for Portage Lisgar. The problem about glass houses is that people who live in them shouldn't throw stones. And I don't want to live in the past either. I think there's a rotten scandal here. I'm looking forward to speaking about it tomorrow morning. But I do recall the people that the former Prime Minister Stephen Harper decided were worthy of being in the Senate, who ended up committing various acts of coercion, some allegations of bribery. I mean, Senator Mike Duffy is an example. There are people who served in these institutions as parliamentarians who were put there solely for the benefit of being able to grease the palms of their friends. And I really regret that we have to think about that. Let's just take an oath of doing better, all of us, and not assuming that we know that everybody else is corrupt, but we never will be.
The honourable member for Portage Lisgar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you know what? I will disagree with my colleague across the way on many things, but she is often thoughtful, and I look forward to hearing her speech on this very topic tomorrow morning, because I think it'll bring a few issues to light that this Liberal government will not want to hear. In terms of Senate appointments, don't quote me, Mr. Speaker, but I think it's 87 that the current Prime Minister has put into a Senate that is no longer functional, that is apparently independent, but is stacked with a whole bunch of Liberal insiders. I'm not for throwing stones in glass houses. The reality is we both agree this has been a failure in terms of this scandal. There have been dozens, and that's dozens too many for Canadians to bear, and that will churn after the next carbon tax election.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Dauphin Swan River Neepawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want great intervention by my colleague from Portage Lisgar. I was wondering if he had any more examples of so-called not so much corruption, but kind of conflict of interest. If any other projects come to mind to him as he works as an MP here in Ottawa.
The honourable member for Portage Lisgar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I've only been over here a little over a year, so I've only seen like a half dozen or so out of this Liberal government. But one that I can't wait to see coming forward is their refusal to hand over documents about their Net Zero Accelerator Fund, which my colleague and I are working to investigate on the Environment Committee right now. I think there is a wild story that's going to come out about a whole bunch of money that was spent promising to reduce emissions, and once we see the information, it will prove to have reduced zero emissions with zero opportunity to reduce emissions. And of course, before I settle on this, Mr. Speaker, I couldn't help but point out the multiple ethics violations that this Prime Minister has, of course, been proven of.